Finding pride in your heritage and living up to a standard. Now, I'm going to add a little preface that when I was younger, I felt so low about myself and had been conditioned to think so little of myself and feel so bad about myself that I would have been immediately hostile to this idea. I would have been extremely hostile about it. And it's because I felt so bad about myself. But recently, I revisited the idea of expectation and how do I have expectations of myself? Because one of the things I noticed in all of my friends that were more successful at life than I was is they had all been conditioned to have an expectation of themselves. And usually that came from spending time with their parents and the things they saw their parents do. What if, like myself, your parents didn't spend a lot of time with you? You are witless in this way. You are a blank slate. Well, oftentimes, people in their lives have someone, an uncle, a coach, anything that instills values in them, shows concern and blah, 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 gives them those standards they lack. But what if you just have none? What if it's just non existent? No one took an interest in you, no parenting. You are a grown adult and you have no standards. You have no expectations of yourself. This is a bad thing. Now, heritage is something we all have. And everyone in every society has done something cool, has people that are above average, have people that have done amazing things. Now, it can be a little harder to find, but trust me, they all exist. There's always something you can find pride in. And if you have no standard from upbringing, I think this is a reasonable way to go about it. Now, immediately, people are going to jump to the idea of racism and racist, and it's going to be taken in that direction. And any idea can be taken to an extreme. I don't think that is a reason to do away with having a standard for yourself or having expectation of yourself. Because if it does not come from upbringing, there needs to be some greater service, at least in my eyes. I don't really think doing something just for myself is a good reason to do something. That has no handles to me. It does not motivate me in any way. Now, arguably, you can say that's because I still think so little of myself and my mind was so damaged at key points. Perhaps. Well, not perhaps. But still, having expectations of myself is important. And it's something I really still lack in. It's something I have yet to implement fully in my life. Sure, I have standards. There are things I won't do, but they are very bare bones and mostly about acts of violence or being hostile with people. Like, my concept on trying to be nice to people because I don't want to have to feel bad and justify my actions for the rest of my life. Because when I'm a dick, I have to spend time justifying why I'm a dick to myself, as opposed to just not being a dick and then I never have to justify it. So, like, you can say that's a standard that has come about through personal experience, but there are other things, other reasons, other standards. And I think they can be found through heritage. If you see yourself as something, you have to live up to a standard to be that. That is the key. You have to have an expectation of yourself that you will do better, be more. And it doesn't always have to be in these, immediately in most people's minds, I imagine things like athletics come to mind or scholastic. I can't even think of the word. School. Oh, goodness. But I do think this idea of standards and expectations is important. And if you can find it another way than heritage, I mean, by all means, feel free. But I am coming from a position where I have nothing. So, what does everyone have? They are born. So it so their genetic material comes from somewhere, right? Now, you don't have to go out and do whatever it is, a 51 in me or whatever the fuck that's. I don't trust that stuff anyway. Uh, I think they are much more about entertainment than actually divining where someone's genetic material comes from. Or that's genetic material sounds like semen, but nevertheless, there are people like myself where it's like, well, where does my blood come from? Well, I really don't know. I have a vague notion, but that's good enough. You don't need to be exact, and it doesn't matter as much as long as you have the standard, as long as you have an expectation of yourself is what is important. Because if you don't, it is difficult at times to motivate yourself, to will yourself to do things. But if you see it as, I do not do this, this is not part of me, then that is a more powerful motivation. It is like there is a group behind you. And that's suppose what I'm ultimately trying to get at is that you feel there is more weight behind it than just you, because and I do think I'm extrapolating information about myself here that isn't necessarily true of everyone else. But if it is for the good of the group, I am much more willing to put myself in suffering than if it is for me. I'm like, I don't care. Fuck it. Don't mean shit anyway. That attitude is very dangerous. And I notice a lot of things that are, I would say, wrong with me have manifested in the younger generations. And I ultimately attribute it to technology. I'm not saying that's necessarily the cause. I feel that way, feel that way. I can't say what it is necessarily because, but regardless, I do think this is an issue where people have no, I don't want to say meaning, but they have no connections to the past. They have nothing that grounds them. And that, while grounding you, also gives you expectation of yourself. I do not do this. I live up to this standard. Now, like I said, every society, culture has cool things about it. I know a lot about history and different civilizations and societies. And I have especially focused on South America and Africa because there is you have to look to find that stuff. And even like in Mesoamerica and stuff, there's more about Mesoamerica and South America than there is Africa. Um, but it does exist. And although my knowledge of African history is certainly lay, it is there. And there is a lot of stuff that went on. You can find cool things to relate to yourself and then come to expect them of yourself. And I'm not saying you necessarily have to be Achilles here. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose of it is to strive to do better and feel like it's for more than just you. If it is just you, because like I said, that is one of my biggest issues that I suffer from, is that when things come down to just me, I don't feel I'm a good enough reason to do it. And I see that manifest in younger people all the time in America today. And I ultimately also think technology is kind of a form of abuse, but it is important to have an expectation, a standard. And I think that life is more difficult without it. But also, if you don't have it, finding it and implementing it is also a painful process, because you can fail your standard now. You can come up short. Now, this isn't something you should obviously hate yourself for, but it is something to strive to be like a role model, almost like an innate role model. But it is similar to a role model, as something to model yourself after, something to strive to be like. You aren't supposed to attain it, it is just supposed to be a guide for your actions, and a guide that betters your actions. That is also very important. It is not something to make you feel worse or make you feel bad. It can if you violate it, absolutely, but ideally people aren't going around doing that kind of stuff all the time, you know. But I think it's important, and I think it's something people should really consider: having standards, having expectation, and finding some kind of pride in their heritage. Even if you don't have exact information on your heritage, you know, you can have kind of an idea. It doesn't matter if you're exactly right. It matters the standard, the expectation of yourself, and feeling like a greater sense of purpose in yourself. Take it for what it's worth, I guess.